Good morning and welcome to this week's recruitment discussion with Jump. And this week we have, well, what can we describe this week? The budget change, the umbrella reform, the Employment Bills Act. What do you really need to know for 2026 to make that great? And this week I'm joined by two experts, no pressure ladies, to help Dave and myself, if Dave actually turns up, to actually navigate these choppy waters. Today we have got Sue Haddrell from Marsh Commercial. Sue's a recruitment insurance specialist with 4 years experience at Marsh. She provides expert advice to recruitment and umbrella companies of all sizes, which is good from our point of view, and startup to multinational, strong focus on risk management, and she prides herself in offering a valuable guidance to recruitments and educating them on the potential risk that can impact their business. We have Poonam Mawani, founder of Azuki Accounts, an expert in recruitment, financial compliance, and payroll solutions. She helps recruitment finders build financially strong, scalable, and investor ready businesses to give them clarity, commercial insight, and structure their financial setup if it's not already set up. So she has built Azuki, providing end-to-end back office solutions for the recruitment sector. So hopefully, ladies, we've got everything covered that we want to talk today from a financial point of view and from uh, I suppose, a insurance and commercial point of view.
Regulatory, yeah.
Yeah. So this is obviously a very hot topic, and I know it's a hot topic because usually I get the odd email here and there about people, etc. But I had a load of emails and a load of calls actually over the last 2 days about what can we ask? Can we ask questions? Shall we ask questions?
Yeah.
Which I said, absolutely, you can join them. But obviously, we've got a load to cover, so I'm going to jump straight in. So, the first question, I sort of phrased this as that this is the perfect storm. With the NI rising to 15%, national living wage increasing to 12.21 pounds, joint liability rules for umbrellas coming in April 2026. What's the single biggest financial mistake you see recruitment leaders making right now, and what should they be doing instead?
I think it's expensive. I think obviously having UK employees nowadays it is expensive, especially if you have a little bit of churn as well. That's even more added cost. We're noticing trends to outsource and offshore. South Africa being probably one of the biggest increases of headcount that we're seeing across the board for recruiters. And that's not just delivery or sales roles, that's actually back office as well, marketing, HR, customer service, finance. It's a well-trodden path now. So if you're not exploring that, I would say that's probably the best way to ensure that you're getting profits down to bottom line as well. I mean, headcount over there is staff over there is a third of the price over here. So, it's kind of a no-brainer. They share our culture. Actually, technically, they're very good and very strong. And even if you were to bring them over, even periodically, that's still significantly cheaper than hiring a team over here. I would say make sure that you do it in a compliant way. So make sure you're going via a reputable employer of record. Make sure that you're paying all the relevant that they're paying all of the relevant taxes, and that their employment contracts are watertight. But that's probably the best advice I can say.
Going off the back of that, definitely I'm seeing the same thing. A lot of my clients that are coming around for renewal are expanding into different areas. So I'm seeing kind of a lot of tech stuff going to America. A lot of people exploring American options at the moment. And yeah, definitely just outsourcing around the world to different countries. So because there's a facility to work from home, people are jumping onto that quite significantly. From a compliance point of view in relation to risk management, that's just worth checking on your contracts to see where the law governing the contract. If it's USA or Canadian law, then you might need an extension on your insurance policy to cope with that at all. If you're expanding out to places to different countries, then you might need to just review that when your policy comes for renewal. So you're moving away from the UK side of things. So we need to just assess the risk to make sure you're covering correctly the level of cover you need for your foreign placements as well.
I have a quick question on that then. Obviously, there's a big sort of drive when we start to look at contract workers and temp workers that your accountancy practice has to be onshore in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
If we're offshoring a lot of that to places like South Africa, etc., how does that affect that governance that has been put in place?
Um, Go on. Do you want to go, Sue?
No, Go, Pinar.
I mean, from an accounting perspective, South African kind of accounting standards are quite similar to ours, actually. There's a few quirks, but not hugely different. In terms of kind of technically, they're very strong accountants over there. Yes, there are some GDPR kind of things that you would need to comply with and make sure that you are doing that in a compliant fashion. But these people are assigned to you. And so as long as you have the right contracts in place and legal terminology, we tend to be covered. We're regulated by ICAEW, ACCA, other professional bodies to make sure that we are compliant, and they check everything that we do.
So very quick questions coming from Gwyn, which is, if we employ a person from another country, how do we pay PAYE tax, who pays them, etc.?
If you go via an employer of record, you pay the employer of record every single month, and then they pay, in effect, are like a payroll bureau, and they would payroll your employee as well as paying all of the relevant taxes. You could ask them for confirmation that those have been paid. Obviously, it's out of jurisdiction. So in terms of for them coming back, as long as you have a watertight contract, should be okay. It's unlike, the UK regulations where they go up the chain, and we'll talk about that later. But it tends to be quite heavily regulated in that industry.
So what we're saying is then, as usual, if it's an offshore person, then you're paying for that service. You're not paying for that employment. The employer of record, so the person should be employed by that company, and therefore it's their tax right in that company, or that country, sorry, that is relevant from there. Okay. So let's talk about the insurance gap then, Sue. When umbrella companies fail to pay the HMRC, and we're seeing quite a lot of that at the moment, the tax liability lands on the recruitment agency. That's what typically happens. And more important, which insurance policies actually protect the agency against this scenario? Because I suspect many recruitment leaders think that they're covered, but actually they're not.
So an insurance policy will not cover for the payment of tax at the moment. Obviously, that's with the new regulations coming in as well with the joint and several liability. There's potential that can fall on the recruiter or the end client, either way. What an insurance policy will do will cover you for tax investigations. And what you need to be looking for on your existing insurance policy is something called legal expenses. So you can have that as part of your current policy. It'll be same as your professional indemnity, your public liability, your employer's liability, and legal protection. Or you can take it out separately. So you could have a separate legal expenses policy that may be a bit more all-encompassing with a separate insurance provider. And legal expenses will provide for the tax investigation side of things. So the liaising with HMRC, doing the digging and finding out what's gone wrong and where it's gone wrong. At the moment, because there's no specific legislation in place, or there's nothing to insure for, there's no duty in place, there's nothing there at the moment, there's no specific insurance policy in place for the payment of that tax. So if you are found to be short in a certain amount because they've done their investigation, that's still on you. That still falls on the recruitment company or the end client at that point. So there's no cover for the payment, only the investigation side of things. There are conversations happening about whether that can be provided, but at the moment, again, because there's no legislation in place, there's really nothing to insure for at this stage. So nothing's been put into place at the moment. The only other sort of area that might come into it is the umbrella company going under, so leaving you with a debt, and that would be a trade credit risk. So there are trade credit facilities available for that side of things as well to cover you for bad debts and getting those funds back.
That's a separate thing, Sue, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it's honestly not my area of expertise. I have a team that does that for us, so I can make introductions if necessary. But a trade credit risk is something, yeah. If you're looking at bad debts or risk of companies going under and leaving you with a debt, then that's what you should be asking for. And we can certainly make introductions, and I'll pass you on to the right guys who know a little bit more than I do.
So I'm often sort of asked that the HMRC, or told that the HMRC workforce isn't particularly large, and therefore the chance of being caught is quite low. This year, how many people have you seen fall under that sort of issue and had to claim or have been investigated by the HMRC due to umbrella companies failing or people failing to pay the HMRC the correct tax liability?
One.
I was going to say, I actually haven't seen any, so it's not something that I've come up as a query. So I haven't had any sort of queries coming from my recruiter or my clients saying this has happened to me. What do I do about it? Or I've had inquiries. It's something I raise as a conversation with clients and things like that who are concerned as part of their kind of review. But as far as I'm aware, I've not had anything actually come up saying we're under investigation, I need help.
Okay. So do you think this is going to be a problem when the law changes, or do you think that it's still going to be a fairly minuscule issue?
Potentially. Certainly I'm seeing a lot of umbrella companies not renewing, and they're the smaller ones who've got their names on the naughty lists or has sudden changes of directors several times throughout the year, and those kinds of patterns I'm seeing. And yeah, they're dropping off the radar. So it's possible that by the time we actually get round to the legislation, the ones that are back in place are going to be the nice, shiny, good ones who are all compliant and FCSA regulated, and that's not good. And we're not going to see an issue of it because we've filtered out the naff ones in advance.
So let's then put that then a different way. Let's look at that into the PAYE dilemma then. Okay, so Poonam, we've seen sort of more clients mandating PAYE instead of allowing umbrella agreements. For an agency that's, say, running, let's say, 25 to 50 plus temps through umbrella companies, what's the true cost of switching to in-house PAYE versus outsourcing it? And what are the hidden risks that most people miss in outsourcing payroll arrangements?
I think this very much depends on the end client, so the recruiter's end client. Since this legislation change has kind of been announced, we've noticed a massive trend in our recruitment agencies and clients mandating that they don't want the risk. They don't want the risk that umbrella companies might not be compliant. And so they're saying, look, we'll give you contractors, but you have to run it PAYE in-house for yourself. And, we're not saying that these people have, never done PAYE before in their life and they're going to start doing it. But most of these, agencies have outsourced finance functions. They have accountants that do these things, and we act for lots of our clients that do it. And then they'll come to us and say, for example, Apple, this end client has, mandated that they'll give us 35 contractors, but they have to be PAYE through us. We're like, okay, this is how we would do it. So obviously there is an additional cost that you're going to pay an accountant to do running that payroll for you, but it manages the risk. And the whole idea is that you factor that into the margins that you're doing. And we often give all of our clients a calculator that helps with, what your actual costs are, what they're involved, and whether to go back and negotiate with them clients. Say, yes, we can do this. Some clients are happy with the PAYE model, but via an umbrella company, but force that hand. And obviously they would require audits and confirmation that is what's happened. I would say just it's communication. It's communication between umbrellas, insurance providers, with end clients, your accountants. Make sure that you're all aligned. Make sure that you all know what the risks and costs are associated with each of those options, and make sure that it's in your risk. There'll be some clients that are very risk averse, while some are actually okay to take a bit more of a risk. So just make sure that you're doing it correctly.
That's a big leap, though, for a lot of recruitment agencies, isn't it? To go from, certainly the small micro recruitment agencies, to go from, outsourcing everything to maybe having it inside, when umbrella creates with it. If you were looking at that, what would you say to leaders of agencies that are considering changing to say, right, what is it that you need to really look at to ensure that change is seamless and you're not putting your own recruitment agency at risk?
It's not that big a leap. I know everyone thinks it's a big leap, but it's not. I mean, most even micro businesses will have a payroll for the director only to pay themselves a minimum PAYE or whatever it may be every month. So they do have a PAYE scheme already set up. I would strongly suggest anyone that is doing PAYE with contractors in-house to have a separate PAYE reference, apply for it with HMRC, and keep your internal staff and your contractors separate. Straightforward to do. Speak to your accountant, they will set it up. It means that when you're doing your reconciliations and your balance sheet and PAYE, you're keeping them separate. Otherwise sometimes it gets a bit complicated, and it means that you can split them out in your P&Ls more accurately as well to get more accurate margin figures. But it's not that big a leap. Most of these people aren't running the PAYE themselves. You're not going to get an owner manager who's just, I'll just do PAYE myself. Usually they're with another accountant or an external party. Just speak to them and they will absolutely help you.
Okay. Quick question that's coming as well. Is the FCA the gold standard accreditor?
It's the one we work with
You
the
are
most.
allowed to answer.
It's the one we
I
work with
would
the most.
say, yeah, I mean, FCSA obviously they do have very rigorous audits and checks. I would say there are other things that you can do to have peace of mind as well. And we talk about safe rec, we talk about other checks that you can be doing internally as well. All of that combined, there should be regular and multiple checks with different parties to give yourself comfort and to give your clients comfort as well. I wouldn't say one thing is the best thing.
Yeah, agreed. The due diligence in your background is just as important on you as it is just making sure you rely on a random company that happens to be accredited by the FCSA. Definitely, we work with the FCSA quite regularly. They are sort of one of our top companies that because we provide insurance company for umbrella companies as well as recruiters. So there is that sort of balance between the two. Professional Passport is the other one that we work quite closely with as well. So, but yeah, as Poonam said, the due diligence and using things like safe rec and your own background checks and your own software facilities definitely help along the way as well.
Credit checks as well.
Yeah.
Everybody should be doing credit checks, please. And that's not just on clients, but on suppliers, on everybody.
We're always amazed at how many people don't do that, particularly if they're a smaller company or a smaller growing company, and hoping that everything will be okay. And 99% of the time it is, but then suddenly something happens and it costs them a month, 2 months, 6 months.
Well, I mean, a supplier going under is just as important as a client going under because they might provide some really big services to you that might, disrupt business as usual. So I would always say, I mean, Credit Safe, is such a, and there are lots of other kind of bodies that do the credit checks. They're so affordable nowadays that I'm gobsmacked at people not doing credit checks regularly.
So let's sort of move a little bit. Let's look at the compliance minefield then, because that is going to be a bigger minefield, especially as the Swedish derogation. Remember, the Swedish derogation is ending, and that's the 12-week equal pay rule. The one-day fair dismissal rights has changed. We know it changed after the budget last week. So, in the Employment Right Bill, the compliance landscape for temp workers is completely changing. What are the contract changes or processes that every recruitment leader must implement in Q1 2025 to avoid any potential tribunal claims down the line?
Do you want to go, Sue?
So in terms of from an insurance perspective and a risk management perspective, things like employment tribunals, and that kind of thing is, again, as it comes under legal expenses, it's actually like a separate type of policy. A legal expenses policy covers for those kind of employment practices liability, which comes under your management liability side of things, and that covers you for what you do within your business to help your employees. Essentially, the way that you run the business and the way you treat your employees comes under management liabilities and legal expenses kind of side of things. So in terms of employment tribunals, again, that's that sort of due diligence and background checks and making sure you're seeking external legal advice before you're making any decisions, making sure you're seeking legal advice for your contracts to make sure they're all in place and things like that. But if you need cover for sort of the defense of yourself and anything like that at all, and making sure, proving that you've done everything you should have done, then it's a legal expenses policy that will do, or employment practices liability policy that will help you with that.
I mean, most external HR companies offer that service anyway. Most of my clients, including us at Azuki as well, we have internal employees. We have like a retainer with an external HR company, and every single letter contract is signed off by them. And even if that means that an employment tribunal was to come about, actually we're covered because they have backed us in following the correct process. So actually, for affordable fee for the size of your business, you can be covered and protected, but don't try and do it yourself. I would say make sure that you have a robust compliance process, but that actually you are using experts who will provide the right up-to-date contracts. The amount of times I've seen, I just stole this contract from my last employer and we've just rolled it forward, and it's completely out of date for terms and clauses, and it means you're not protected from an insurance perspective. That's not good either. And I would always say just make sure you're affiliated with somebody who's giving you regular contracts that are up to date with regular laws, new laws.
I mean, that's the thing that we talk about consistently, that we see when we audit companies and we have to look at their contracts, and we look at when their contracts were originally written for both their employees, for their temp employees, for their contract employees, their contractors, okay, and their client contracts. And we find, as you say, that some have been, stolen, let's say, from other places. Some have been sort of amalgamation of various things. I've seen some that have been set up by friends of friends who are lawyers, etc., and they are appalling contracts. So I would absolutely say to everybody at this moment in time is that the best thing you can do is go back to either the rec teams, whoever you're associated with, to see if they have compliant contracts and what's coming out, because these contracts are going to be not changing, monthly or quarterly. These are probably changing daily as the law changes and the movement changes as things start to come in. And I would make sure that you are constantly now at the moment updating that contract, because it's not just about the ones that are in place, it's updating all of those contracts and your new contracts going out. And I think it's important that everyone sort of looks at that, because if not, this isn't going to be like GDPR when it came in. It just sort of came with a big sort of flash and everyone had to do certain things, but then nothing really happened from it. This will be absolutely governed, I think, to the nth degree, because it's employers and employees and temps, etc. I think there's going to be a lot of viewing of these contracts by various people.
Yeah, definitely.
Due diligence, Sue. Let's talk about due diligence. If a recruitment agency has been working for the same or working with the same 2-3 umbrella companies for years, what due diligence should they conduct right now to make sure that they're not sitting on a tax liability time bomb? And obviously, once that's finished, Poonam, if you can say from a financial perspective, what red flags in umbrella companies should an accountant look for, or should be ringing alarm bells from that point of view? So let's look at you first.
I think it's a lot of it's what we sort of what you were just previously talking about. So definite, regular, frequent reviews of your contracts with everybody. So including your umbrella companies. What is it that's written down? What is it you've agreed to? What is it they've agreed to? Seeking external legal advice and making sure you can both comply with those requirements, and that's okay. I think relationship is quite a significant one. I was speaking to a few APSCO members recently who have really great relationships with their umbrellas, and it's both ways. So they both get a great deal out of the relationship, and there's trust there. So you have that trustworthy relationship in making sure that you're both compliant in every way that you need to be. And so communication and having those kinds of conversations on a regular basis is still very key. And that goes for, I think, any kind of contractual review. So even looking at when your policies do come around for a review, making sure you are speaking to your broker and sort of updating on things that have changed in the last 12 months. They might not make any difference whatsoever, but it's worth just taking into consideration. So if you do have plans for the future going forward, then we can say, actually, we can help you with this, we can look at that for you, etc. But I think, in terms of due diligence for umbrellas, that communication and that checking of your relationship and your contracts, and like you say, doing your credit checks, doing your company house checks, doing your FCSA or accreditation checks and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, make sure you're doing that, but you're doing it more frequently.
My bit. So red flags that I would look out for on umbrella companies as an accountant. As you mentioned, make sure you're doing regular credit checks on all of these people, and you'll get notifications if there are any changes. So I know, like, for example, Credit Safe, they actually ping you every time it changes. So one to be mindful of. Have a look on Companies House yourself. Balance sheets are all on Companies House. Get your accountant to have a look at it. You should be able to see PAYE, VAT, liabilities stick out like a sore thumb. If there are big balances that haven't been paid, or things don't look about right, your accountant should be able to spot them, or at least say, actually, that doesn't make sense, and ask questions. Third-party audits, so FCSA, SafeRec, all of the others, they will give you reports, and obviously they have to submit information to those accredited parties to check that they are compliant. I would always request those reports and from them to make sure, peace of mind, you keep them on file as well. So make sure that you've got an audit trail of what you've excuse me, of what you've checked. Don't just ask the question over the phone, are they okay? Yes, they're fine. Make sure that you have a documented audit trail of your checks and controls that you've done. If anyone comes at you and wants to do an investigation or review, at least you can prove that you have taken the time and effort to go and do those checks yourself. So they're all documented. Look, red flags, if they don't pay people on time, you tend to get some screamers. So let's not ignore that. Sometimes, we listen to excuses and we believe them. And I would just say, take an independent view on it. If people aren't getting paid, that's a red flag. Don't ignore it. Review pay slips. Some of the smaller, more risky umbrellas, should say, have very funny ways of showing payments to your workers on pay slips. Have a look at them. They should be very clear and transparent. Holiday pay, for example, there shouldn't be any additional deductions or anything like that. So just make sure that it looks about right as well. And you can ask for checks on those. But yeah, they were the things that I would say you should be looking out for.
Oh, you're on mute, Howard.
Howard, you're on mute.
Oh yeah, so the dog just went off on the Amazon man obviously came to the house and the dog went wild. Pay slips are something that comes up an awful lot, and we constantly are advising our clients to make sure your pay slip is as transparent as humanly possible. And obviously, when you've got a third party such as an umbrella company sort of supplying that pay slip, what things should you be looking for that should be actually on that pay slip? Because again, when I've asked clients, some of them do not know what should be actually on a pay slip to ensure that A, it's compliant, B, it's legal, and C, that you're not ending up in a problem sort of further down the line.
I mean, it's definitely, gross pay, all the right PAYE, NI deductions, holiday pay you'd want to see split out as well. It's the funny things, it's the random deductions that, don't have narrative next to them or unknown things. I would always say, get a sample of pay slips across your worker base, submit them to your accountant, they'll tell you if it's about right or not. They will know whether, and there will be some specific quirks to particular contractors, but depending on what sectors they're working. I would always say just check it out. Like, for example, oil and gas, energy, they have like per diem rates and expenses and things like that. So just check that, those are compliant.
And I suppose if you push that then from a legal point of view, Sue, how do you ensure that your umbrella company is paying the right tax based on what's coming from?
I don't know on that one. So I'm not a legal advisor or a tax advisor on that side of things. So from an umbrella company perspective or from insurance or risk management perspective, that's not something that we would actively monitor. We wouldn't actually actively monitor for liabilities if a company is paying anyone on time. Possibly from the trade credit side of things, that might be something that crops up, but again, slightly out of my remit, I'm afraid.
Okay.
SafeRec will do those checks. Like, they will check that PAYE has been paid regularly, for example, and that's the big one, really, isn't it, for these workers? They will verify that. Obviously, from a compliant, I think I saw one of the questions, from a compliance perspective, it's hard because everything is historical. And even SafeRec, the PAYE, when they pay a contractor, they technically may have until the 22nd of the month in order to pay PAYE to HMRC. So even that's in the future, and you can't verify it until after your worker has been paid. I would just say do regular checks. These failings or red flags aren't just 1 month that's happening. They tend to happen over a few months cumulatively. So make sure that you're doing the regular checks and they're checking it regularly all the time, and it's not just a spot check on 1 month, and you'll be able to highlight any issues.
So with that temp market, because the temp market's where the main change is going to be, how do we ensure that we're completely compliant and safe from a temp point of view, especially for things like holiday pay, when people have so many different ways of paying holiday pay back, when the holiday pay is requested, etc., and all these sort of different things that everyone sort of tries to hide holiday pay to a certain degree. How do you make sure that you're completely above board on holiday pay? And how do you stop and how often should you pay your P11Ds and all those things back out when a contract stops? Because if you've got temps working a day here, a day there on different companies, all that cost of sending a PAYEs and sending out P11Ds, etc., adds up, doesn't it? So what should you be doing for that?
Always do your own internal calculations on holiday pay. I think that's always smart to do, and make sure you're checking that with what the umbrella company has believed as well for the number of hours that they've worked. So that's just a simple check you can do and make sure that they are calculating it in the same way that you are. In terms of yes, there's always going to be a cost to running PAYE, always, and I don't think you can ever escape that, but make sure that those costs are factored into your margins. Otherwise, there's no point in us doing business in this way if we're not making any money at all. So just make sure that they're in line with their expectations per your contract with your end clients.
So let's push that then, because we talk about offshoring, we're talking about nearshoring, we're talking about build or buy, etc. So let's ask the ultimate question. At what point does it make financial sense to set up your own payroll operation or even your own umbrella company versus continuing to do it through a third party? So what are the maths that recruitment leaders should be doing? And so obviously from an additional insurance point of view, what insurance requirements come with running your own payroll and your own umbrella?
I think it depends on your sector and what your margins are. You can have industrial sectors which have slightly lower margins. You'll have, some that are higher. I think it very much depends on your margins, and also it's not even in your hands technically. It's to do with your end clients. If your end clients say, this is the way I want you to run your payroll, you almost don't have a choice. They may mandate that you have to go via PAYE in-house, and in which case we find a solution that works for you financially and in a practical way. Let's talk about what the options are. Let's find one that works for you. They may say, actually, I'm okay with it going via an umbrella. I mean, I think setting up an umbrella, or do you mean like a payroll bureau in-house, is doable, but I would say actually umbrella companies are there for a reason. I'm not here to hate on them. They do provide a very good service, and they do take a lot of headache out of what is quite a regulated market. So don't just think anybody can set up an umbrella company, because it's not that easy at all. And they are experts, but I would just say let's talk and have with the umbrellas, let's talk with accountants, make sure that we're finding a solution that works for you.
I think, there's definitely a variety of bespoke options available. It's not a one size fits all by any stretch, and what's going to work for one company is definitely not going to work for another company. Sort of in the last year or so, I've definitely had and recruiters crop up that are now looking to set up their own umbrellas and do it themselves. So essentially, they're setting up a new entity, they're giving it a new name, and it's going to be the payroll that they do for themselves and for their placements. It's not happening very often. It's definitely happening with some of the larger clients, so it's obviously something that actually benefits them financially. And again, from a financial perspective, the premiums can be very, 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 very varied. Sorry, get my teeth in. So yeah, it's very bespoke to the actual individual company as to how it's going to fit with their requirements. I think some companies are definitely finding having an umbrella and doing it themselves because they've got the expertise, they just haven't put form to it, and then just putting form to it and assigning a budget to it and separating it off is what's going to make life easier for them. And some of the smaller businesses actually, they don't need to set up their own umbrella. They can just bring the PAYE in-house and just extend what they're currently doing slightly more and bring in a bit more expertise, and that works for them.
I think some of that, Sue, is because margins just get squeezed.
Yeah.
And they're just looking for anything to either retain a little bit more profit, or even in some cases, to your point, make a bit of profit. Mm-hmm. Because when it's low margin, high volume, and constant changing in contracts, it becomes quite difficult to make a profit.
I think it opens up slightly more opportunities. Risk management is, I suppose, risk management on that side of things can very much depend on, so it's sort of spending money so you can open yourself up to make more money. So you're protecting yourself more to be able to open up those opportunities to take on those larger contracts. So if you have the opportunity and the finances and you do want to set up your own umbrella, then you're compliant with that contractual requirement that says you need to have a separate umbrella to be able to do your payroll. Actually, we do. We use this company. There we go, all in-house. So you can then take on that larger contract to provide those outsourced workers and that side of things, to be able to do it. So you're spending money to help yourself make money again, that kind of thought process on it.
Okay, so let's look at moving forward then into 2026. Obviously, we're sitting here in December 2025. The budget changes hit in April. Joint liability for umbrellas comes in April 2026. The Employment Rights Bill is being phased in through this year, next year, and part of the year after. If you could give recruitment leaders 3 actions to take away in the next 90 days, what would have the biggest impact on protecting their business, their margins? What would they be?
Check your contract. Check your contracts, check your relationships, first of all, and do it regularly. Maybe like quarterly review, having quarterly reviews or something like that. Just put something in the diary to make sure you're doing it. And like you say, you're not just spot checking every now and again. Look at your insurance policy and talk to your brokers. Is legal expenses something? Is it a concern? Is it something you do think you're going to have an increase in? Are the worker types? Do you think you're going to get an increase in employment tribunals? Is that something that's a concern for you? What's going to keep you awake at night? Okay, let's have a chat with my broker and see if there's something we can do about that risk. Am I concerned that one of my umbrellas is going to go bust? Do I need to put some trade credit in place? What's that side of things look like? So yeah, that would be my definitely first thing you should be doing to look into 2026 is review everything, what's keeping you up at night, and then communicate with your broker, with your accountancy teams.
I mean, just exactly everything that Sue just said. I would say make sure that you have a very good compliance checklist internally. It's not just ad hoc, actually, it's embedded into the culture of your business. And literally from the moment anything comes through the door with a client or a contractor, everything follows the same process, and that way nothing can slip the net. Don't try and, we've seen some horror stories about scams and things like that in the industry, and I will say, well, what happened to your compliance process checklist? Make sure you don't skip that just because a client said it's urgent and they're going to give you 30 roles and all of these things, and that you're following the same process for everything, and then you won't get into hot water.
So here's a sort of question that I'm going to put down to you two. You've sort of seen from recruitment agencies, from solo businesses right to large scale recruitment agencies, from an insurance side, from a financial side, etc. You've obviously, like everyone else, has been tracking what the government is doing, tracking what the change in legislation is happening, etc., what the budget legislation, the right employees' rights bill, etc. What are the things that you are most worried about for your clients? And what would you advise them to do now to really change that? And I think it's the bit that what you're most worried about seeing.
A lot of clients that are coming to me have, when they're reviewing their policies and stuff, have said they've had a really tough couple of years. It's not been easy, but quite a lot of them now are coming to me saying they're doing okay. They're holding on. They're holding steady. There's not been growth, but there's not been dips. They're doing all right. So I suppose my concern for my clients is making sure it'll be good to see them have that growth in the forthcoming year. And I'm seeing that happening out of clients that are diversifying their portfolio. So going into those new markets, exploring those new areas, maybe taking on new industries or looking at new avenues. So diversity of what you're doing is definitely having an impact on income. Yeah. Or if you've been stable, just keeping doing what you're doing, because obviously you're doing it well, and at some and where you can take on new stuff, then jump at it quickly and go for it.
I would say infrastructure. I think that's the biggest thing I'm going to see on the horizon. Lots of people we're finding a new way of working now, and I think this is the new norm for sure. And I see a lot of people getting, okay, right, I'm going into a new geographic market, I'm going into a new sector, whatever that may be, but actually not having robust infrastructure in place in order to manage that growth. And that's going to come from systems, processes, checklists, in making sure that you're following the right process for that sector, and making sure that you're compliant, rather than just going, oh, great, I just happened to, land some contractors with this client and I'm just going to make it work. I'm not actually making sure that your back end and your back office, mid office systems and even CRM systems are geared up for that change. That's the biggest way businesses tend to fall over: lack of infrastructure.
Dave, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think for some of the scale ups, it always used to be, you had a salesperson, another salesperson, another salesperson, and then you could get an HR person, and then you could get a marketing person, and then you could get a technology person. And the legal side was like the final bit as you grew your business. I think with all the changes that are happening, I'm beginning to have conversations, or we are having conversations with people recognizing actually having somebody internally who can cover that whole legal compliance role. It is becoming a more significant hire. And that's new because a lot of recruitment companies are led by salespeople. That's kind of what we're seeing. I think as we go into 2026, I think we're going to see the rise of that more.
Do you know what's interesting is that we've obviously got lots of people on this webinar today, and the amount of people that we sort of talk to about this. And I remember having this conversation on the day before GDPR went live, and I was invited to present to about 50 recruitment leaders in Manchester, of which 49 of them had done absolutely zero on GDPR. And I'm worried that a lot of recruitment agencies will bury their heads in the sand and do nothing until they have to do something. And then by that stage, it's a little bit too late. And I think this is so much more serious than GDPR, because I think this is a critical issue that would sink lots of businesses. And as you said, Sue, lots of businesses have had a really hard time over the last 2 or 3 years from a financial point of view, and whether they can afford to recover from a HMRC investigation, et cetera, is a real big question. And I think
you have to, that there's definitely from a bury your head in your sand perspective, you have to put yourself forward and learn. So you need to go and read the news. You need to keep up to date. You need to go on all these webinars. You need to make sure you understand it. And then, as Poonam said, put your infrastructure into place. What is it? Okay, I've learned all of this stuff. What am I going to do with it? What am I going to do about it? Okay, my infrastructure needs to be better. This process, actually, we could tweak that. This relationship isn't really doing me any favors because we've not spoken to them in 6 months. Maybe we should do something about that. So having your headspace, just learn to learn, go out there and understand it, and make sure you understand it. And when it changes, keep up to date with it.
And I think the thing is, to use that analogy about burying your head in the sand, which is a good one, now it's quicksand.
Yeah.
There isn't a way out. You can try and bury your head in it, but if you get it wrong, yes, you are literally stuck. Whereas before, you just came up and then tried to alleviate it. But you can't now. It is much tougher.
So I think the inner recruiter of me sort of kicks in at this point and says, this is a massive opportunity to go to your clients and sell this process to your clients to remove other competitors within that client who aren't following that process. Because obviously at some point the client is going to be affected by any of these type of scenarios, and the last thing you want is your client being affected fully for the tax implications on temps, etc. And I think this is a great opportunity, if you get it right, to go out to your clients and win more exclusive business, a bigger slice of the pie. And, Dave, we're talking to lots of companies where they've got lots of recruitment agencies supplying, alongside them, and yet they're not selling a solution that could innovate their client and safeguard their client. And I think, to me, there's an opportunity that every recruiter is missing if they're not doing that. Golden case just come on, especially for those clients who are engaging directly with umbrellas, and there will be quite there will be quite a few of that. Okay, Poonam, Sue, anything that you want to add that you think that we haven't asked or talked about that you think would be, relevant to this conversation, or do you think we've covered everything and everyone should go away and either come back and talk to yourselves about what they could do, or come back and talk to Dave and I about what they could plan and put into a process to help them deliver on this before April 2026.
I would say there's so many changes coming in, and actually, you should be having regular dialogue with all of your relevant parties and to make sure that actually there are lots of quirks for each individual business as well. And, it's not one catch-all for everybody, but make sure that, your specific business is covered from all bases, but have regular chats with with all relevant parties.
Agreed. Yeah, I think as well, again, sort of back to that kind of fear of burying your head in your sand and fear of the new coming along. We're not here to catch you out. We're not here to tell you off or tell you haven't been doing things or anything like that at all. We are suppliers. We're there to help you. We're there to assist you. So it's a friendly conversation. It's going to be open and honest. Just have those conversations with your suppliers and and make sure you're getting all your ducks in a row.
Here's an interesting question then to finish off on, because I'll be interested to see how the market is doing this. If you looked at your clients from a percentage point of view, how many have come and talked to you about these type of things?
Less than 5%, I think. They come up in it comes up in review conversations. Yeah,
less than 5%.
Wow.
I have them face to face when I go to review when I go to networking events. I have them during review meetings. So those kind of conversations I will raise with the client to say, how are you managing this? What are your concerns about it? But actual, like out of the blue, someone calling me up saying, I'm concerned about this. Can we have a review of everything? Yeah, I don't get that very often at all.
So what you're saying before Poonam answers that, what you're saying, Sue, is that everyone thinks that their current insurance policy will cover everything that's happening, and what you're probably saying, and what you're saying, it potentially, but there's lots of things that it's missing.
Potentially, yeah.
Poonam.
We have quarterly strategy meetings with every single one of our clients as part of our service offering, and it's one of the agenda points every single time. And we want to be seen as business partners. So your suppliers should be business partners with you. So we were speaking with them. Do they necessarily come to me, like Sue mentioned? Probably not. But it's something that we're raising with them every single quarter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's something that is discussed, but not possibly open like.
Yeah. Poonam, Sue, as always, we bump into each other a lot on the circuit. Always valuable advice, always great advice. And I would implore anybody on this call now, if you've got any questions that you need to ask them offline, then feel free to find them on LinkedIn, ask those questions on LinkedIn, because I think this is
always around
the biggest change in employment for an awful long time. And this one is going to be very critical if you get it wrong for people. Ladies and gents, that's it for today. Next week, we are going to run our final webinar of the year where Dave, and we're going to bring Paul in and Heather in as well, to give our view of 2025 and 2026 and have a bit more of a light-hearted finish to the year. Poonam and Sue, once again, thanks so much for your input. Absolutely brilliant as always. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Dave, as always, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.